Welcome to Santa Barbara Talks with Josh Molina. It's my pleasure today to be here with none other than the Noozhawk founder, Bill Macfadyen, a guy I've known for a long time, my boss, and one of my friends over the years who's been very supportive of me journalistically, and someone who goes back a long time, back to 1999 when I first started working at the local paper, and Bill was a copy editor, fixing up all my work way back then, making my stories better, and he's making a career out of doing that, apparently, among other things. But Bill, I want to talk to you today as our inaugural sort of episode for the new year here, kicking off 2022. I thought I would lead with the best journalist in town, Bill Macfadyen. How are you today?
Well, thank you. I'm great, but clearly that means you couldn't get Tom Bolton to do this.
Well, I have to save something for later. Tom is certainly the other best journalist in town, and he's totally untouchable at breaking news. I just sit back in awe, but we'll talk to him at some point.
Okay.
Well, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Noozhawk. This is a special year, as I understand it. I'll let you sort of talk about that. But, Noozhawk is this I don't want to say it's growing anymore. It's sort of established. It's really not that old in the grand scheme of things, but really quickly has cemented itself as being the super important, essential news source in the community. And so I want to sort of talk to you about where we're at with Noozhawk right now in terms of the role Noozhawk plays, the things that Noozhawk does that are unique from what other media entities try to do in town. And how have you been able to survive 15 years, Bill? Let's talk about Noozhawk and what Noozhawk is today.
Sure. 15 years. It only seems like 50. But Noozhawk was founded, if you put on your way back hat, back in 2007, to really address the absence of reliable and trustworthy local news in southern Santa Barbara County, specifically Santa Barbara and Goleta. In about a 6-week period the year before, the daily newspaper imploded. KYT had a significant downsizing. So in about a 6-week period, all of a sudden, there was no source for pretty much everyday mainstream local news. And I knew that people were online looking for news, not being able to find it. But I didn't know whether advertisers would be online looking to sell and that they would support that. So I put together a plan, went out and shopped it to businesses. And it turned out several of them, specifically Village Properties and Renee Grubb and Ed Edict, got the concept and committed to advertising for a year. And then I convinced them to prepay. And that provided the seed funding to get Noozhawk started. So we launched in October of 2007. And we tried to be this general interest newspaper online, just without the paper. But we realized very quickly that it's really expensive to do that, and we'd be out of money by next week if we continued on that path. But at the same time, our epiphany was that the Google Analytics were actually a gold mine. They were telling us every hour, every minute of every hour of every day what our readers wanted and were interested in. And so we started following the Google Analytics and started, reporting on more and more on what the issues that were of importance to our readers. And that really got our audience growing. I'm not going to lie, it was pretty small at first. It was, we were looking for a hockey stick. It didn't really happen that way. But, blessed or cursed, Santa Barbara County has a ton of emergencies and disasters every year. And each time there was a disaster or a significant news event, our traffic would spike. And then a few days later, it would drop, but the drop would be higher than it was before. And so when you look at the continuum of Noozhawk's traffic over the 15 years, every spike has been related to a natural disaster or something catastrophic. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until 2017, the Whittier fire that July, when the traffic just went off the charts. And then it was just the succession of news events that pushed us higher and higher. The Thomas fire, then the Montecito debris flows, and then COVID. And that just really, I think those 4 or 5 events cemented us into Santa Barbara's consciousness that whenever there's breaking news, whenever there's important news, we have to go to Noozhawk to find out. And 9 times out of 10, it's there when you go the first time, but 10 times out of 10, it's there when you go the second time. And a lot of that is a testament to our staff, like you, Josh, who are known in the community, have been doing this for a long time, and have a reputation that helps Noozhawk when push comes to shove. People just trust us, and I think we've proven over time that we're reliable and trustworthy, and that's really important, especially in this day and age of the internet, where there's blogs, there's social media platforms. Anybody can go on there and say anything, and that's great if you understand the parameters there. But at some point, you want to know, like, what can I trust? Does this person really know what I'm talking about? And more important, I think, for us is it about a community that I recognize? So for us, it's really important when we go to a school board meeting or to a city council meeting, and we're reporting on that event, and people who were there recognize that we're just writing the story about that event. We're not trying to characterize it in something other than what happened. And we're able to do that because of the strength of our staff and the care and professionalism that they have.
So can you talk a little bit about creating or covering news in this community? I feel like we have a lot of journalism in this town, and by journalism, that's a large umbrella. We have the daily paper, which was at one point, when it was owned by the New York Times, considered to be the daily paper of record. And of course, there were always those critics who, they're always not going to like the main paper in town. But it was a place where you had, for the most part, the best journalists were working at that paper. And
right.
Then we obviously had that meltdown. So now we've got all these journalists sort of fragmented. We've got people working here and there, and we've got Ed Hat, and we've got, like you said, citizen journalism. People kind of just posting things. We've got a weekly. We've got Noozhawk, which is like a 24/7 online daily. We still have the old paper record, which is still doing its thing. And what are the challenges, or how did Noozhawk make an impact, knowing that with the breakup of the daily paper, there was sort of all these other people trying to do journalism and fill that gap? How did Noozhawk sort of compete with that?
That's a really good question. And, I think it was, there are several reasons in Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara had some unique circumstances. As you said, the implosion really galvanized the community in ways that other communities just didn't have. It was so dramatic, it was so profound, it was so widespread that you couldn't, the status quo was unacceptable. Something had to change, something had to be invented to fulfill that or fill that void. In other communities, it wasn't anything so dramatic. It was just this long decline. It's no secret that what I call fossil media is under intense financial pressure. And you'll see these newspapers continue to shrink and shrink and shrink. And they're really playing not to lose, but they're not playing to win. And the readers are not served by that. But over time, people just accept that because they just don't notice that it's getting worse. In Santa Barbara, because of the daily newspaper, we were shocked into activism. This was not acceptable for a community of our size. And you're right, we do have a lot of journalists here, but part of that is because Santa Barbara is a great place to be. When you and I were at the daily newspaper under the New York Times ownership, that's a mid-sized newspaper in a mid-sized market. And historically, journalists at those papers always want to grow to a better paper, a bigger paper. So their goal is not to stay in Santa Barbara or to stay at that paper, but to go to the Los Angeles Times and the New York Times and the Miami Herald. But because of Santa Barbara, we were able to attract and retain journalists who didn't want to go to those bigger papers. They wanted to be in Santa Barbara. So just like with UCSB and City College and Westmont, we got really talented people who gave up something on their career path because they wanted to stay in Santa Barbara because of our community. So that's a benefit for all of us. But in the early days of the implosion, you know, the internet was there. There were blogs and there were news sources out there, and so everybody was online trying to find out what was going on. And for a while, it's kind of cool because you feel like you know something nobody else does. You know, I went to this website and I got this information. I listened to this radio broadcast and I got this information. I talked to so-and-so and I got some information, and now I have more than you. But for the most part, you know, that's an exhausting process, and they're not trained journalists. They have other jobs. They're bank tellers, or they're auto mechanics, or they're teachers, or they're, you know, doing something else. But being a journalist is not what they were cut out to do. And so they got tired of that, just weary of that. And so that void, there was this kind of soup of all this stuff going around, and Noozhawk provided a platform with professional journalists doing our thing and just covering the community in areas that they couldn't find any place else. You know, one of the first things we did, we had Rob Kuznia, it was one of our first reporters, and he had covered the K-12 beat for the daily newspaper. And in the time between the implosion and Noozhawk's launch, I don't think anybody in town had covered the school board. So that was like more than a year of no school board coverage. Yeah. And, you know, we have all these parents who are looking for news about the school board. And so we started covering the school board, and all of a sudden within that K-12 network, people were telling their friends, "God, Noozhawk's covering the school board." You know, we didn't have anything profound to say. We just showed up and wrote about what they were doing. Turns out there's an audience for that. And we did that with a lot of our stories. And like I said, with the analytics, that really kind of helped us refine where we needed to go first. And then we've stuck to that model where, as long as we're hitting those topic areas, our readers are fine. And then, you know, if we have extra resources or extra money or extra staff, we'll put them to use somewhere else. But we have to continue to feed what our readers find most important. And I think that's been a large part of our success. It's not easy. I mean, it's a challenge here, just like any other company. You know, the cost of living is really high. There's not enough workforce housing. All of those issues are certainly not, we're not immune to those, but you know, we've got a model that works for us. And I don't know if 10, 15 years from now that, you know, the standard model around the country is Noozhawk's, but I'm pretty sure that a lot of what we're doing today will be in that final model. You know, we're not just in the ballpark, we're running around the base paths. Yeah. And that's cool. That's exciting.
Well said. Let that be the last time we mention Rob Kuznia on this podcast. Pulitzer Prize winning Rob Kuznia, whose head is already 4 times as big as mine. But no, we're friends. I give him a hard time about going from, you know, winning the Pulitzer. But obviously that's a sign though, right? You know, that's a quality level of journalist we had working.
He would not have done that if he had not worked for Noozhawk. Yeah,
exactly. Hey, I want to ask you about something. You know, obviously I've worked at Noozhawk since 2014. And so I'm out there on the front lines, and, you know, I get a lot of feedback, direct feedback. And I get people who say, Noozhawk is amazing. It's awesome. It's great. It's always there. It's first. I love reading your stories. I love what you guys are doing, right? You've seen it. You mentioned Noozhawk, they're light up, right? And I've listened to other people who have been less positive about it, sort of trying to figure out what Noozhawk is, right? And so it's leading to my question, which is, you know, one of the criticisms I get of Noozhawk is something like, oh, well, you know, maybe they're a little bit too conservative. Maybe they're too moderate, or you know, or they're like, they have those columnists who write about those conservative issues. And I don't know if you know, that's sort of you know, I don't want that in my coverage. And I always say, well, you know, that's like the opinion section of the newspaper, right? I mean, it's diversity, and it's not all of the columnists are like that. But then I get, well, why don't they ever endorse? Why don't they ever get involved in these elections and that sort of thing? So can you talk to me, Bill? Is Noozhawk conservative? Is it liberal? Is it something else? And why doesn't Noozhawk endorse in elections?
Noozhawk is something else. We're transpartisan, nonpartisan, probably centrist. I'm an entrepreneur and a small business owner, so my leanings are going to be toward what's good for small business is good for Noozhawk and for the community. But whether you're on the far left or the far right in Santa Barbara County, there's a publication out there just for you. And if you agree with them, that's great. You found a home. They love you. If you disagree with them, you're dead to them. They don't care what you think. They don't want you in their midst. On Noozhawk, we don't care what your opinions are. We're just happy to have you. Noozhawk is a platform for everybody. And if somebody is complaining that they're not seeing writing or opinion columns that they like, they're welcome to write one themselves. I mean, we're open to that. We have those, and most of those people who are writing for us pitched us an idea, and it's, as it's hard to write a column or hard to write anything on a consistent basis. But
hard to write a good column. Yeah.
Yeah, my column's a testament to that. But we're grateful that they want to they want to write regularly, and we're happy to publish that. We don't endorse. We don't, half the stuff I like, the other half I don't like, but at the end of the day, I don't really care as long as they're writing it for Noozhawk.
Mm-hmm.
As far as our endorsements, Noozhawk doesn't want to endorse for several reasons. One of them is that we believe it's our job to just provide our readers with the information and truthful information and facts so that they can make informed choices on their own. They don't need me to tell them how to vote or what to think. They're perfectly capable and smart enough to do that on their own. We believe in them. But the other more selfish reason that we don't do that is because we don't have the time or the resources. We have 7 full-time journalists, and if we were going to endorse, we just don't have the time in our day to interview people. How many city council candidates and mayoral candidates were there in this last election? Something like a dozen. Like, I don't have the time in my day to interview a dozen people and then thoughtfully come up with an endorsement or a non-endorsement. But to be candid, we don't have an independent editorial board. It's me. It's Tom Bolton, our executive editor and my business partner. And if we were going to do endorsements, we would be having to involve reporters who are making a choice on an endorsement and then turning around and writing a report or reporting on that candidate for something they did. And that's totally unethical. And I don't think anybody should be doing that. And shame on newspapers that do it that way. If you don't have an independent editorial board, you should not be in the business of endorsements. That's just wrong. And why people let them get away with it, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's transition from there to one of my favorite features in Noozhawk, and you mentioned it, is your column, your weekly column. Because I mean, this honestly, Bill, this is not personality. Santa Barbara Talks personality, Josh. This is real Josh here. You're one of the best writers, column writers I've seen, because you make me laugh. It's hard to get people to laugh out loud with humor. It's very difficult. And then as somebody who's worked with you over the years, I know how good of a headline writer you are. And I also know how good of a line editor you are in terms of reading my story. So I really appreciate that. So let's talk about your column. Then I want to go into your background. Tell me about your column. Your column's controversial. It's popular. Many of our letters to the editor are saying things like, Bill should never write a column again. And then others are saying, oh, wow, well put, Bill. That was the best thing I read in Noozhawk all week. So tell me about your process with your column.
Yeah, I think most of my readers wish I had a process. I mean, sorry about that. It's really just taking the top 5 stories of the week and then repackaging them in my own words. You guys have done the hard work on that because you already reported on the issue at hand, and I'm just taking what you wrote and having some fun with it. For the most part, I think it's more sarcasm than opinion. by the nature of our site, breaking news is a major driver of our traffic. And so quite honestly, a lot of times what I'm writing about is bad news. I mean, horrific news. Just terrible car crashes, train situations. It's just the worst stuff. So it's hard to be, you can't be funny. You have to be respectful. It's a lot of times difficult to write, but that's when those stories that pop up that don't have that kind of death and destruction around them, that I can really have some fun with. And usually they involve city council meetings, and those are always good for laughs, or should be. But because Noozhawk doesn't endorse or take political positions, doesn't mean we abdicate our responsibility as a journalist, as a news organization in Santa Barbara. And so, I feel like it's my responsibility as Noozhawk's publisher to speak up and to help hold public officials specifically accountable for things that they do or don't do, because our reporters can't do that. They can only report on that. They can only report the truth. They can't opine on that. But I feel like in my column, I can most of the time gently prod or chide to raise awareness about an issue that really needs to be said. Why people read the column, some of it's, my mom reads it out of obligation and to criticize my grammar. But, I think most people are just generally interested in what happened in the past week. And a lot of them, I hear from them all the time where they try to guess the top stories. And, sometimes, when you're writing a story as a reporter, it's going in the top 5. There's just no question. And then other times it just surprises, it comes out of nowhere. So it's just an interesting thing. But the genesis of it was just an opportunity to recap the top 5 stories of the week and maybe get them some more additional traffic.
And sometimes your column recapping the top stories of the week is then in the following week in the top 5 most read. So
that's true. And I that's on you, because that's up to you to kick me out. But if you guys can't write better stories, then I guess it's up to me to put something in.
Sometimes you embed a video at the end. Did you spend hours searching for that, or how do you find those?
Sometimes I come across them in my, perusing the web. A lot of times people send them to me. So anybody who has a video wants to send them to me, I'll give you the shout out. But I started doing that just because, video is good for stuff, but we don't make a lot of videos. And so, and then sometimes there's just some funny videos out there, or interesting videos. So there's no rhyme or reason to it. A lot of times people will just send me the link, and I think I got on like 3 or 4 weeks where I had people sending me the same topic video kind of thing. So it's interesting, but anybody who wants to send one to me, my email address is on my column.
Good. And now, when I was hired back at that daily paper in 1999, I believe you were the copy desk chief, whatever the title was, but you oversaw
News editor,
copy desk editor. And so I didn't really interact with you much. You were kind of like the other guy. Like when you walked to this side of the newsroom, I was like, uh-oh, he's either going to fight with the city editor or he's going to come to me directly and say something is wrong with my story. That's how, that's kind of how the newsrooms were, right? Like, it's like, yeah, they're over there, we're on our side. We over here in the newsroom, we think we're doing all the real work. And you guys over there are like, oh my God, I can't believe another sloppy story from this reporter. We're going to have to clean up. You guys are doing all the real work over there right before it gets published. So it's that little inner tension that happens in a newsroom. So, I remember those days, and I remember talking to you, but never really getting to know you that well, because I was on the news side, you were on the editing side. But can you talk a little bit, Bill, about your journalism background? And you mentioned you're an entrepreneur, you're a small business owner. I imagine many paths were open to you. Why and how did you get into journalism? How did you end up working for a New York Times Company paper?
Another good question. If I my career path was going to be playing center field for the Dodgers.
Oh, okay.
But it was not till after high school that I realized the only way I'd be patrolling center field for the Dodgers would be as a security guard. So, I couldn't do math. So that was basically left journalism, or I think aircraft mechanic, as the only avenue forward. And journalism sounded pretty interesting. I got into it thinking I wanted to be the next Frank DeFord or, write for Sports Illustrated. But then I had to take a copy editing class in college, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. I'm basically lazy. And so as a copy editor, somebody else does all the work. You just critique it and improve it if you can.
So you admit now that we work harder on the news side, on the reporting side.
That you do all the work,
Okay.
And then we have to fix it. So yeah, it's a trade-off. But copy editing just appealed to me, and I think I was kind of good at it. And then I got my internship, summer internship at the Houston Post, which was at the time the 23rd largest daily newspaper in the country. And it was owned by the Toronto Sun, which is a tabloid. And the Toronto Sun and its sister Sun papers in Canada are really heavy on visuals and wordplay. And at the time in the early 80s, that was really unusual and very groundbreaking. And we weren't a tabloid, but that same mindset drove all of our approach. And the copy editing staff was they were tremendous teachers. And I learned so much from my mentors on that desk. And that's where, wordplay was huge. You want to because you're trying to get people to we didn't know it at the time, but click on that story with their eyeballs. And now on the web, it's just as important. And with Noozhawk, we do try to be search engine optimization conscious with a lot of our headlines, which is why people see repetitively Santa Barbara, Goleta, Santa Maria in our headlines. People get bored by that, but that's really important for search engine stuff. And but the wordplay is, you should have fun, and it should be a pleasing experience for people to not just read the same headlines over and over again. So I think we do a really good job. And we have Michelle Nelson, who's a superior copy editor. She's a much better editor than I am. And Gianna Magnoli is really good at that too. And so are you. So we have a lot of good folks who are writing stuff. And it's just really important, especially on the internet, because, the internet is probably the most impersonal invention ever, but it's also the most personal because, you're reading it on your phone in your space. When you're reading it on a desktop computer, you're a foot or so from the screen. You have it in bed with you. You have it in the car with you. It's always with you. And so it's very invasive. And so, but there's a personality and a personal appeal that comes with that I think people respond to, and that's really important. So I don't know, I rambled on, but I got my start at the Houston Post. That was my training ground.
And you were able to get hired by the New York Times company at that point, or how
I always wanted to come back to California. And so as soon as I had access to the Post's stationery, I started, and the Times had bought the daily newspaper here. So I started bombarding them, please hire me, please hire me. And they finally relented and said, all right, fine, come on out for an interview. And they were so desperate that they hired me. And that was 1987, and I've been here ever since.
Wow.
I love the community.
Wow. And I will say that I love Sunday nights because that's when you edit, and everybody's a good editor at Noozhawk, but I like it because I know when I have a story that's due on Sunday, you're going to read it, and one of two things is going to happen. You're going to send me an email saying the story sucks and we're holding it, or it's going to have an amazing headline and a whole bunch of amazing links that you're going to put in, and you're going to have a stronger nut graph. So I do appreciate you, when you don't send me those nasty emails, which is not.
I'm not an ogre.
It does happen, but that's my fault, not yours. Let's talk a little bit about.
You admit I do more work than you.
When I don't do enough work, yes, you do more work. Yes, there's a correlation. Yes. So let's kind of go back to the top a little bit. You have a history, and people know you in this community also as somebody who founded a newspaper, a physical newspaper, the South Coast Beacon. And I know from time to time people will come up to me and say, "Didn't you used to write for the Beacon?" And I'd say, "No, I didn't write for the Beacon." But there's a presence, right? People know about it, even though it wasn't around, I don't think, too long. You can tell me that. But what did you learn? Why did you try to start a newspaper? How did that evolve to the model we see now in terms of what Noozhawk is?
Yeah. So Tom Bolton and I founded that newspaper, the South Coast Beacon, in 2002, summer of 2002. It was right as Goleta was, right after Goleta got cityhood. And we had no business being in business. We didn't know what we were doing. We were babes in the woods, and that thing just was a colossal financial failure. It was a disaster. But we won a ton of journalism awards. We were the California Newspaper Publishers. We won their top award for our category, and to this day, I'm amazed how many people will talk about the South Coast Beacon in reverential terms. It really did make a difference, but financially it was a disaster. And so, my lesson was I should have shut it down a year earlier, because I sure could have used that money for Noozhawk. But it was good because it helped me. When I was at the daily newspaper, people would pitch us stories, and the whole time they're talking, I remember I would be, have my arms crossed, and I'd be trying to think, like, what is their agenda here? What are they, if I didn't think of it or you didn't think of it, then, why are they approaching us? What do they want out of this? There's some ulterior motive here. But when I had the Beacon, it forced me to realize that everybody has an agenda. Every single person in this town has an agenda. But for the most part, the vast majority of them, they're just passionate about what they do, and they just want to share it. That's their agenda. They just want other people to know about this cause or effort that they're doing. And that's a really powerful thing, especially in a small town. And so, we've taken that to heart with Noozhawk, and have tried to make sure that we tell those stories respectfully, or allow them to tell their stories on Noozhawk respectfully, and have that platform to share, because we think that makes our community a better place. And as you know, we can't possibly report on all those stories. We don't have the staff. We're never going to have the staff. Even if we had 70 reporters, we couldn't have the staff to report on all those. But if those people want to write something up and share it with us, we're more than happy to share it with the community. But I think the other, I can honestly say that I don't think I've made the same mistakes that we made with the Beacon. I just make new ones. I'm a quick study.
Yeah, well, you adjust well, right? So yeah. that's the sort of a characteristic of a journalist. You can't figure a story out. You figure out a different way to get it done. You have no choice but to get it in. And again, this goes back to my theme of, like, I work for you, and we talk a lot digitally and, in person a couple times a week. But I don't really know too much about you. Can you talk to our readers about, like, what your life is like in Santa Barbara? I know you live in Montecito. I did a Riven Rock Road story. I'm like, oh, Bill lives there too, kind of thing. Just a little, when you're not immersed in Noozhawk, what are you doing? Where are we most likely to see you around town?
I'm not sure if you can see this, but can you see her?
See what are we looking at?
Oh, you don't see Sadie? Oh, she.
I saw Sadie earlier. Sadie's been in the background for a lot of this interview.
That's pretty much, Sadie pretty much runs the household.
Okay.
My wife Missy and I, we've lived in Montecito for nearly 30 years now, but our kids grew up here, and I've always joked that I sleep in Montecito, I walk the dog in Montecito, and I go to church in Montecito, but I pretty much live in Santa Barbara and Goleta. Obviously with COVID, that's not the case anymore. I've been staying more in Montecito, but it's, it's pretty much Noozhawk all the time. It is 24/7, and I'm usually doing something on it, but I'm walking the dog. Sadie has a bigger media presence in Santa Barbara than I do. She's Instagram famous.
Mm-hmm.
You can follow her at Sadie, the Alaskan Malamute. But, we walk throughout Montecito, especially after the debris flow. I've walked and gone pretty much everywhere and chronicled a lot of that. Watched a lot of Dodgers baseball. Thank goodness for DirecTV. I never miss a game. And then if I'm not here, I'm usually at the Santa Barbara Club.
Right. Well, it is true. The only bias we have at Noozhawk is toward Giants fans. At least that's my only bias. So,
well, I would slightly disagree, because since 2017, I have a new appreciation for Giants fans. I'm less antagonistic toward them, including Jerry Roberts. But Houston Astros, that is the devil now.
Yeah, they're the new Giants.
Evil. They lose every game.
I want to kind of put you on the spot here a little bit, and then I want to wrap up and sort of talk about what's ahead for Noozhawk. But, looking at what you've done and how far you've come, you left the daily paper before, all of the real turmoil started to hit. I think you sort of saw it ahead of time. And then you went off and, you were an entrepreneur. You started the Beacon. It didn't work. You learned from that. And here we are, we've seen other newspapers come and go in town. We've seen them sort of start, be successful, and then fail. It's hard to be a newspaper. It's hard to have a newspaper in Santa Barbara County. And here you are, right? Noozhawk is here to stay. It's well known. It's well respected, like every media entity. Of course, there's people who, it's not their first choice, but there's no more like, is Noozhawk going to make it? It's now like, how big is Noozhawk going to get? How do you feel, Bill, just as a small business owner, an entrepreneur, is just a guy who's been through so much drama, so much newspaper negativity, and you've sort of survived, and here you are, and you've done something really amazing. I mean, do you ever stop and think about that? And how do you sort of assess your life and how far you've come?
Yeah, I don't think I appreciate that. Thank you. I don't think we have time for for my Lewis and Clark analogy, but honestly, I do think about it, because I'm invested in this community. I've wanted to live in Santa Barbara my entire life. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. This is my home. I'm proud of this community, and I want to leave it in a better place than how I found it. And I feel, I can't do that. I can't go build a building or save some property, but I can lead a news organization that's reporting on this community with respect and appreciation for who it is and who our residents are. And so I think, that's important to me. Nobody has figured out how to make local news successful. That model is still very much open for discussion. And the fact that we're doing this, have been doing this for 15 years, is really, something to be proud of, but it's not something that we're resting on our laurels. We know we can do better. We think there's a better way to do it. We continuously review our operation to see how we can do things better or more efficiently. And so, we're always looking for that. But somebody in the next few years is going to figure out how to make local news sustainable, hyper-local news sustainable. And we want Noozhawk to be the one that figures that out. We want Noozhawk to be the one that everybody points to and says they did it the right way. And so, that's my objective for Noozhawk. But part of it comes back to the community. I love this community. Our employees love this community. We want to be here. We could be anywhere. We could be anywhere doing something probably, a lot more profitable or, faster growth. But Santa Barbara is really important to us, and Santa Barbara deserves a really quality news organization, and that's what we strive to deliver every single day. And I can tell you that's our my business partners, Tom Bolton and Kim Clark, and that's our culture in our company, and that goes down to our newest employee to our most senior employee. Everybody is invested in that, and that's who we want to serve. This is about our community. It's not really about us. But like I said, if we were recognized in our industry as being the one that figured it out, that'd be great, because it should be Santa Barbara that is in that conversation. As we know, the world revolves around Santa Barbara.
Everything seems to come through here eventually. Now, real quick, did you ever think of a different career after you left, the daily newspaper? Do you think I'm just going to go be an entrepreneur in some other field?
I kind of fell into it. I didn't have that discussion with myself after leaving the Daily, but I did after I shut down the Beacon. And I was actually looking at specialized information publishing, i.e. newsletters.
Yeah.
Because I had a couple of people had approached me and said, "Hey, could you do a newsletter for me?" And I thought, well, this is interesting. I wonder if you can actually make a living doing just newsletters. And so I started researching it, and turns out you can. And I joined this organization, and I went to this national conference in Washington, D.C. And, when I would go to a newspaper conference, people would be talking about Craigslist and the sky is falling and we're having to lay off people. And, why am I in this business? But when I went to this specialized information publishing conference, the sky could not have been bluer. They were so hopeful about the internet, so excited about where they were going. And what I learned from that brief experience was that in newsletters, it really is all about specialized information. You want to identify your niche, and then you want to keep narrowing the niche until you get to the exact people who feel like they're going to die if they don't know what you know. And they will read your publication. They'll pay any amount of money for that publication. That's their lifeblood. And so when I decided to start Noozhawk, that was one of our philosophies, is to, whatever niche we were pursuing, make sure that we are absolutely covering it so thoroughly that we absolutely have their loyalty going forward. They're going to count on us come hell or high water, and they will be our ambassadors to tell everybody else about it. And I think we've done that. We've done that with K-12 education, thanks to the reporting that you and Gianna and the guy whose name I won't mention, because of what you guys did. I think we're known in K-12 education as the go-to source for whatever's happening in our schools. We hear it from parents, we hear it from teachers, we hear it from administrators, we hear it from the community. We've also done that with housing development, thanks to your work with the Planning Commission stories and all those other commissions that run Santa Barbara. And we've done that in sports with Barry and now Mark Patton. So it's really exciting to see those niches, but that's what they are, is we just want to continue to identify niches and then burrow into them. And that makes us be, unimpeachable as a source for local news and information in Santa Barbara County.
Yeah, well said. And on that note, what's to come? 2022. I know you're always talking about internally what we're going to do down the road, what Noozhawk's going to do. So you want to share a little bit of that as we wrap up with the public?
Sure. We're not quite ready to sponsor Dodger Stadium, but that's on my to-do list.
Okay.
Our biggest initiative is also our scariest. We're part of the NewsPack Constellation, which is an initiative or partnership of WordPress, Google News Initiative, and several national journalism foundations. And they really They really recruited Noozhawk because of the complexity of our operation and our longevity. But their idea was that small sites, independent sites like ours, are spending too much time and resources and money, frankly, on back-end stuff that is taking away from their journalism product. And so what they're trying to do is create a platform that can work across all sites in their family and free up those resources and money so that they can put that back into the journalism. We're doing fine on our own with our current system, but we also see the benefit of having those kind of resources and assets behind us. It doesn't hurt to have WordPress and Google, intentionally pulling for Noozhawk and providing some support there. And we do have needs that we want to fill that, we can't do that if we're constantly trying to figure out how to get our own platform to work that way. So that's exciting. It's been going on for almost 2 years. We still have probably another 2 months to go before we make that switch. And it's exciting and terrifying all at once, because I know something's going to break. And the last thing I want is for, Noozhawk readers to wake up one day and they can't find what they're looking for because we didn't anticipate something. So, but once we make that transition, our readers are going to see a much more efficient, faster website, and we'll be able to do things on the fly where in emergency situations, we'll be able to make some changes like effortlessly that we just can't make now. So I think it's going to be a much more dynamic product for our readers. We have Jade Martinez-Pogue, who's doing a USC, a California Health Journalism Fellowship at USC's Annenberg School. I think this is Noozhawk's 4th or 5th fellowship there. And hers is on Santa Barbara County's, woeful absence of facilities for people going through mental health crises and why that is and what we can do about that. So we're excited about that. We should start seeing some reporting on that in the next couple of months. And that will be like a second quarter project. Then I know that we're looking at, that you guys on Newside are looking at fentanyl deaths and the opioid crisis, and that's just exploding in Santa Barbara County as it is elsewhere. So we're looking at some of those circumstances, and then college readiness and the college and career readiness for local high school students in both the South Coast and North County. We'll be doing that later this year, which is an ongoing issue, and that's really been exacerbated by the COVID-19 situation. And then COVID had to forced us to shelve our plans for a direct public offering for the company, but we're looking at resurrecting that late this year or early next year, so that we can raise some funding to make sure that Noozhawk is positioned so that after Tom and Kim and I retire and I move to Los Alamos, that Noozhawk can continue to thrive and that we can expand our staff, pay them more, depending on how this interview goes. That would include you.
I'm gonna do a little creative editing now.
Yeah, pressure's on you, Josh. But just put Noozhawk in a better position to grow for the future. We're going to be fine, but we want to start looking at not our legacy. Seems kind of like too ambitious for me, but that is really what we're looking at. We want to make sure that once we've passed from the scene, Noozhawk has the wherewithal to continue on and isn't in a life or death situation. We think it's really important. We want to be there for our community.
Yeah, well, it's definitely an exciting time to be at Noozhawk, but also I think for readers, for the public, to sort of constantly be seeing what Noozhawk is doing, how it's growing and how it's improving. Our breaking news is like crazy, like even over the 2-week period here of, as government shuts down, Tombo and Gianna, I had some time off there, so I'm not going to count myself here. Although I am doing a story today on the schools beat to keep up Rob Kusnia. Whoops, I said his name. Legacy. No, Newshock's 24/7, right? Like if there's a traffic jam on Highway 101, or somebody sees some smoke in the sky, they're going to go to Noozhawk to find out what happens. And I think that's just one of the many different offerings that Noozhawk brings for sure. And of course, your investment in podcasting, I know this is separate, but your embracement of my idea has also helped quite a bit, I'm sure, with your audience.
Well, and let me just say something about that too, because I wasn't a big podcast listener prior actually to you. Uh-huh. But the value of it is the personalization of you. I see that as a net benefit for Noozhawk, because the more that we can demystify how journalists approach the news and how we report on the news, I think is important for people to understand, especially with our readers, because they're so engaged with what we do. They're so invested in us that that's really important to know. And so, if they just read a story and it's by Josh Molina and they don't really know how he approaches a subject, they're going to make a decision or a value judgment on just what those words are. But if they see you, notwithstanding this disaster of an interview, but if they see you with a public official and how you're approaching this and how your mindset works with the questions, that helps them establish more of a respect for you and an understanding and appreciation for what you do and how you do your job. And that only benefits us, because this isn't some mysterious thing that we're doing. We're just asking questions and we're reporting the truth. That's all a journalist can do. And if they can see us do that work in kind of a more natural setting, I think it really helps them humanize it, and that works to our benefit. We have tremendous people on our staff, tremendous people, and I'm really proud of the work that they do. And I think shining a little spotlight, or pulling back the curtain through this podcast is really good for us and you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Bill. I really appreciate you spending some time here on a Sunday afternoon, and I'm going to get done here and go back finishing my school board story.
Yeah, because I need that story.